So, I got two dogs again. This one's actually Kyler's dog, Kiki. She's a puppy, and she's very bitey and very hyper. Hey, stop it! You stop it! You stop it! I've shown him before, but here he is again. And of course, as always, there's Petey, who's been with me the whole time. Not my usual way of doing things, but welcome to another Redeye Raw, everybody. Those were my dogs. I was out feeding them, so I decided to go ahead and show them on camera. They're both kind of inside and outside dogs. Typically, we just let them run around the backyard all day, but occasionally they get brought in to hang out, and then they got that back room where they sleep. But Kiki is a very bitey puppy because she's teething, and if you don't have a chew toy in her mouth every second, she's gonna bite you. It's really annoying. But that's just puppies for you, and she doesn't bite hard or anything, so it's not anything that bad. It's just kind of annoying. But from what I understand, that should stop on its own as she gets older. And it's not anything worth getting angry about, so whatever. But that's not what the topic of today is. The topic of today is lolcows and trolls. And my thoughts on them. If you're unfamiliar with the term, a lolcow is someone who sort of just gets made fun of online, and that's how they're known. And I assume everyone knows what a troll is, but those are typically the type that would insult or make fun of a lolcow. There are many different types of lolcows and trolls, and they have varying degrees of what I consider to be acceptable or unacceptable. Back in the day, on one of my friends' channels, Gaming Retextured, those videos are still up, by the way, I used to do trolling on Xbox Live, which was actually the first time I used Sergeant Bastard online, so it was in one of those trolling videos. But those were just us inviting random people to the party, and then pretending that we knew them, or some other variant. But, anyway, my thoughts on trolls and lolcows, right? There's, lolcows that are made fun of because they're kind of weird, eccentric people. You know, you have your Chris Chans, you have your King Cobra JFSs, stuff like that. But then you have the ones that are made fun of because they're incredibly toxic, which there is some overlap with a lot of these. Chris Chan can be really toxic, as can King Cobra JFS when he gets angry. Although I think for the most part he's not too bad, he just bans a lot of people from his comments. But when he gets angry, he gets fucking angry, and he cannot take the slightest bit of trolling. Incidentally, R.I.P. homeboy Scotty, but in case you can't tell, I find, harmless trolling to be perfectly fine. Where I draw the line is where you're actually going out of your way and full-on harassing people, and what I consider to be harassment is not the pussy version of harassment. It's when you're going out of your way to ruin someone's life. Take a look at Chris Chan. His trolls went way too far. They destroyed him as a person and completely changed his identity. I honestly think if he had never been on the internet, he'd be a completely different person than he is now. All this shit about dimensional merges and, the dangerous people he associates with, like Jacob Sockness and whatnot, would not be a factor if trolls had just left him the hell alone. Now, granted, it started out harmless enough with him, people making fun of his comics, and you know what? In all honesty, Sonichu is better than I could probably come up with as a comic. I've written comics when I was a kid, too, and they were god-awful. And his art's not the worst. It's definitely not the best, but I do think overall, Sonichu's not the worst thing in the world. It gets really fucking weird later on, with all the weird sex stuff, and then the part where he has, he marries himself, or, gets himself pregnant or something. It's really fucking weird. I can't remember it, but it gets really bizarre. But my point is, Chris Chan, unfortunately, got trolled way too much and way too hard. I'm sure most of you know who Chris Chan is. I feel really bad for him. He's got a tough life. And I don't think he's a bad person. I just think he's, not mentally capable of understanding when he's doing malicious things. Because I don't think he's a malicious person. He's just an eccentric and obviously disabled individual. It's just what it is. King Cobra JFS as well, super open about his autism. But again, he takes things a lot better than Chris Chan. He does not like trolls in his comments. He will ban you anytime anyone says R.I.P. homeboy Scotty, insta-ban. Because homeboy Scotty's not dead. For those of you who don't know, because King Cobra JFS is a little bit lesser known. I recently started getting into him because of a Deadwing Dork stream that I saw. And I watched some of his stuff on his channel, and I genuinely think King Cobra JFS is actually kind of a cool guy. I just think that he gets too angry sometimes, says a lot of malicious shit when he's angry, and also can't take criticism or trolling. But overall, I think he's a genuinely interesting guy, and I have no ill will towards him, because I think he's probably an okay guy, just a little bit eccentric, and maybe slightly toxic. And speaking of toxic, let's talk about Darkside Phil. Darkside Phil's probably my favorite one to watch, just because, I really like his reactions to stuff, and his constant, like, not taking responsibility for anything. Just, oh, why is the game bugged? Why am I toxic? And then, like, charging people $1,000 to reveal that he has a cat. But, on the other hand, I'm not one of those who wants him to lose his house. I genuinely do not want that to happen. I don't agree with when people, like, actually, like, swat him or dox him and stuff like that, which I think has happened. I'm not 100% sure. I think he's been swatted before. I'm not 100% sure. Swatting is fucking despicable, and people who do it are not good people. And believe it or not, I actually have some sympathy for Darkside Phil. A very minute amount, mind you, because the guy himself does not take any responsibility for anything he does, but I don't hate him. In fact, I think that if he was less toxic, he could be a genuinely enjoyable guy. Now, obviously, his commentary can be absolutely riveting with several minutes of dead air, but my commentary's not much better when I do streams. And in fact, I've had viewers compare me to Darkside Phil when I'm doing badly at the games or getting angry, which I've done. Because I'm not a good gamer. I'm just not. But, you know, I have fun. And, ultimately I realize that my controller is not bugged. There's not bugged insert whatever mechanics here. So, that's the big difference, right? Darkside Phil, like, you can be bad at video games. A lot of people aren't. In fact, there's a lot of people on YouTube that are enjoyable that are not very good at games. But when it's someone like Darkside Phil, he takes it to a whole other level when he's just constantly, and I do mean constantly, deflecting the blame onto something else. It's always the controller, it's always the game, it's always bugged mechanics. And I get a kick out of watching a lot of This Is How You Don't Plays, which, if you don't know, are compilations of Darkside Phil streams that condense it and just show highlights of him being very bad at games. And these This Is How You Don't Plays are usually a few hours long, because he streams all day, every day. It's his fucking job. He's also in a tremendous amount of debt, and while I do find the circumstances of his debt, like the reasoning behind it, at least the rumors, like supposedly he spent a ton of money on a WWE game, I don't know the full truth of that. I do think it's a funny concept if true, but I ultimately don't want the guy to lose his house. I want him to be happy and be able to continue his career, so I can keep watching his content and laughing at him. I don't hate the guy, I just find him very unintentionally funny. Now on to another one. There's Wings of Redemption. Very similar character to Darkside Phil, but I tend to feel a little bit more sympathy towards Wings of Redemption. And maybe it's because I feel like, in all honesty, you're not going to believe me when I say this, but I think Phil can actually handle the criticism better. Because, yeah, he deflects, yeah, he doesn't accept responsibility, like, ever. But Wings of Redemption, it's just kind of sad when I watch him. I just feel, like, sad. It's just a sad situation. Like, yeah, it's a situation the guy put himself in, and he's toxic as all hell, too. He constantly bans people, and I'll admit, I am a fan of, look here, look, listen. I've used it in a couple of different videos. For instance, in The Problem with Pedro, the Sergeant Friend Season 2 finale, when I was voicing Corbin Waffles, I had that line where I said, now look here, look, listen, which, again, I love that line. I reference it all the time, and there's been a few compilations I've seen of Wings of Redemption that I do find funny, like when he's reading out, you know, troll names and things like that. He, I know, has been swatted, and again, I don't agree with that. And he said a lot of bad things. Apparently, he told this story of when he put a cat under a bucket, and it was a disgusting story. It's a horrible thing that happened, and I think that it was definitely wrong for him to do the thing that he did. But, and he also clearly doesn't know that National Socialism is what it is. If you don't know, National Socialism is what the Nazi Party was. And so he's like, he says we should give it a try, not knowing what it is. I don't really think that he knew what that was, so I don't really care that he made that comment. The one about the cat I find a little bit worse, obviously. But ultimately, again, I don't wish the guy any ill will, because this story, from what he says, it was when he was younger, and it was years ago, and he didn't understand it, you know, stuff like that. But I don't agree with it, and it was definitely a bad thing that happened. But I don't find him as fun as Darkside Phil to watch, personally. Like, some of his reactions and rages can be pretty funny. But I find Darkside Phil is just a little bit funnier, I think, just because Darkside Phil comes across as kind of more of a douche. And it's hard to explain, it's just... I feel like he's slightly more... They're both pretty toxic, mind you. They're both very, very toxic individuals, and both of them I'm fine with, lighthearted trolling. I find that funny. Both of them have their own detractors, and I'm subscribed to several Darkside Phil detractors. I haven't watched a ton of Wing stuff. Deadwing Dork did a stream on Wings of Redemption, which I watched the entire thing, so that was very interesting. Plus, they both had Down the Rabbit Hole episodes done by Frederick Knudsen, and I liked those a lot, too. But yeah, I have no problem having a good laugh when it's harmless ribbing. You know what I mean? When it's just, it's stuff that maybe does piss a few people. It does piss them off a little bit, but ultimately nothing malicious. You know what I mean? Like, I don't agree when people, get super obsessed and try and find out all this personal information about these people. I don't agree with that. And I don't agree with doxing or swatting, anything like that. That's disgusting behavior which should not be tolerated. But then there's a darker side to the whole lolcow thing. There's some that are really fucking dark. There's a lot of things that involve people committing very illegal actions, very questionable actions. And I'm not going to get into those. I'm sure you know the kind of things I'm talking about. There's a lot of them out there. A lot of lolcows that ultimately turn out to be some sort of deviant, or do something highly illegal, sometimes ending them up in prison. Again, I've heard about a lot of these from Deadwing Dork. He's introduced me to a lot of things. I'd highly recommend checking out Deadwing Dork. He does great content. I've really enjoyed, he got me into King Cobra JFS, as well as Kay's Cooking, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a very interesting phenomena. And the best thing is the thing is a lot of those people who are lolcows don't realize that the worst thing they can do is react to troll reactions, troll stuff that's meant to bait them. They take the bait every time. And while some of them, yes, are disabled, and it's, unfortunate that because of that, maybe they're not as, predispositioned to understand that. Ultimately, I think that the internet is a very fucking cruel place. You show the slightest sign of weakness, and you're gonna get trolled. It's just gonna happen. And you're gonna get trolled even if you don't show weakness. It just happens. It's how you handle it that ultimately determines whether or not you become a lolcow. If you're an overly toxic person, you're probably gonna get made fun of. It's just gonna happen. And the internet are not nice people. Remember that when the Cincinnati Zoo put down Harambe, I mean, dated fucking meme, I know, but the Cincinnati Zoo asked nicely if people would stop, which of course that just made it worse. I mean, how stupid can you be to think that you can ask the internet to stop doing something? It's not gonna fucking happen. So yeah, end of the day, in conclusion, lolcows can be pretty fun when it's just harmless trolling. Just all in good fun. Stuff like that. But when it's malicious, attacking, trying to destroy someone, that's where I draw the line. And sometimes that line can be kind of blurred. For instance, when people read out all the discrepancies on Darkside Phil's bankruptcy form, I'm not gonna lie, it's funny as fuck, but I don't know if I draw a line there. It's really hard. I mean, ultimately it is public information, so I guess it's not doxing. It's kind of a gray area in my book. There's things like that, but as long as, appropriate information is, of course, redacted, because, again, I don't believe in doxing. Doxing is disgusting. But yeah, at the end of the day, if it's all in harmless fun, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's just as fun. I enjoy a good This Is How You Don't Play, or a DSP Tries It, and I enjoy my share of bite-sized Cobra videos, in addition to actual King Cobra JFS full-length videos. And like I said, I'm a fan of Look Here, Look Listen, and I think that Liquid Richard makes some pretty good remixes of stuff, although I don't listen to them sometimes. I think part of what makes me less enjoyable with Wings of Redemption is when he cries, because seeing someone cry, I don't know, for me, it makes it a little bit more difficult to laugh at. I'm not going to say it's impossible to laugh at crying, because there's been some, obviously fake crying that I've laughed at when people genuinely feel no remorse. But when it's someone lamenting about how they hate their life now, for me it's a little bit harder to laugh at. But there are some Wings things I have laughed at. There's some Wings memes that I do find funny. For instance, he hates being called Richard, and I do not understand why he hates being called Richard so much. Same thing with DSP. Apparently people have been calling him Dave, and he fucking hates it. But ultimately, if you want to have a laugh, I'd highly recommend checking out some Darkside Phil detractor content. That's my go-to Lolcow content that I watch. And then if you want a very interesting individual, check out King Cobra JFS. He's a strange but oddly likable guy. He does a lot of things that make me think, that's really stupid, why would you do that? He does a lot of things that make me think, dude, just fucking take a chill pill. But ultimately, I think he seems kinda likable. And in a way, King Cobra JFS takes me back to an older time on YouTube where just any fucker with a webcam could make a video, and I enjoy the feel of that. You know, you get real people. And that's what I like. I like seeing real people. You know, take or leave whatever aspects of their personality. It's interesting to see different kinds of people. For better or worse, this is a phenomena that is a very internet-exclusive thing. And it's not going anywhere. It's just how it is. This has been Fugitive Redeye, and I've gone on about this for way too long.